What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. It's February 2nd, Friday evening here. We're going to go over Daniel Jeremiah's top 10 risers from the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl is tomorrow. They've had practices and whatnot all week. So there's a bunch of takeaways and some things that we should probably note if you're into Dynasty. This will be a good video for you. So what I'm going to do here before we get into Daniel Jeremiah's article, I just want to kind of let you guys know who's in the Senior Bowl and what players we should maybe be, wanting to monitor. So this is the national team here. They go, national and the other team. But anyways, wide receivers on the national squad, you have Devontae Walker from North Carolina, Roman Wilson, who's on the thumbnail, out of Michigan, Ricky Pearsall, Javon Baker, Brendan Rice, Jacob Cowing out of Arizona, and Luke McCaffrey, the receiver out of Rice. The tight ends over here, Theo Johnson, Brevin Spann-Ford, and A.J. Barner. The running backs, there's 4 running backs here. You have Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State, Marshawn Lloyd, USC, Kimani Vidal, I don't know if it's Vital, and Rasheen Ali out of Marshall. And then the quarterbacks here for the national team, Bo Nix, Sam Hartman, and Michael Penix Jr. So there's a bunch of other players here, but for fantasy, we only care about those positions. And then I'll read the American team real quick here for you guys. If I look at the wide receiver position, you have Xavier Legette from South Carolina, Ryan Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State, Jamari Thrash, receiver from Louisville, Jaquan Jackson, Tulane, 2 Georgia receivers, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint and Ladd McConkey, Johnny Wilson, Florida State, and Aeneas Smith out of Texas A&M. 3 tight ends, you have Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, Jaheim Bell, Florida State, Jared Wiley out of TCU. The running backs here, Cody Schrader, Missouri, Ray Davis out of Kentucky, Dejon Edwards, running back out of Georgia, and Michael Wiley, Arizona. One more running back here for you, Imani Bailey, running back out of TCU. The quarterbacks for the American team, Joe Milton III out of Tennessee, Spencer Rattler, South Carolina, Michael Pratt, Tulane, and Carter Bradley from South Alabama. So those are the players that we're getting a little bit of information on. And I'm not going to take too much away from the Senior Bowl. I think scouts are looking for, those one-on-one matchups with receivers versus DBs. They're looking at offensive linemen. They're looking at all these one-on-one matchups in practice, but they're also just looking at practice habits too. So there's going to be guys that stick out or who are more consistent than others, guys who don't have drops, things like that. So without further ado, let's read. And this is an article here. I'm going to probably link it in the description if you guys want to read it for yourself. But Daniel Jeremiah's top 10 NFL draft winners, risers from week of practice. Starting number 1 here, the wide receiver Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. It says, as you might know by now, I'm a fan of Corley, who was in my top 50 prospect rankings released earlier this week. We'll get a better chance to see what he can do after the catch in the Senior Bowl game on Saturday. He didn't get to showcase his yak ability this week due to structure of practices. And yes, he refers to himself as the Yak King, but I thought he ran good routes during drills. He showed his speed and caught the ball well based on the conversations I've had with NFL teams here in mobile. A lot of people are excited about him. So you're looking at probably a day 2 guy. Don't know if he's a first-round prospect, but small school, Western Kentucky, Malachi Corley looks like a guy who is earning some good press for himself this week. And just looking at his stats real quick, 4-year player here at Western Kentucky last season. Not his best year. He had 79 catches, 984 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He does run the ball every now and then, but a huge 2022, almost 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. So he looks like a nice possession type receiver. 5'11", 210. Malachi Corley potentially being a round 2 prospect to keep your name or your eyes on. We'll shout out Braden Fisk here, defensive tackle, Florida State. Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. Fuaga entered the week as the best offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, and he didn't disappoint once players took the field. He's massive, weighing in at 332 pounds, and his arms are a little bit longer than I expected. There's been some talk about whether he could be playing off guard or better off playing guard in the NFL, but I think he can hold up at tackle. He showed that in practices. So good news there for the Oregon State tackle. Another tackle here, Tyler Guyton. Guyton isn't the most experienced player with only 1 season under his belt as a full-time starter, but he's clearly an ascending prospect. He lost a couple reps during practices, but his combination of athleticism, 6'7", 328 pounds, and upside is rare. He looked like a top 15 pick in mobile. Interesting. So we have some offensive linemen here sticking out. A tight end. How about that? Theo Johnson out of Penn State, the tight end. I was looking for a tight end to emerge during the week of practices, and Johnson stepped up to the challenge. He was the best player at the position. He has excellent size, 6'6", 257, and showed a little more wiggle in person than he did on tape. I was impressed with how he moved on the field. Theo Johnson's an interesting guy. I've seen him. I saw other people kind of say that he had a nice week in camp as well. And overall, the tight end group this year is not. It's like an average year for tight ends. It's not an elite group by any means. I mean, last year with Sam Laporta and the rest of those guys here, you're not going to see that definitely this year. But you're going to see a lot of just like okay to good players. And Johnson here, the Penn State 4-year player, 34 catches, 341 yards, and 7 touchdowns last year, 20 for 328 and 4 touchdowns. So overall, you see improvement each year. I like to see that. This looks like a player that is maybe, I don't know if he's a 3rd-round player, but he's going to be a fringe, potential starting tight end at some point in the near future. So Theo Johnson, keep an eye on him out of Penn State. We have a cornerback, Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. When I was doing my PFF mock draft the other night, I noticed he's a late 1st-round pick. And the wording here by Jeremiah goes, if Mitchell had the goal of proving he was the best defensive player here, consider that mission accomplished. I think the only rep he lost was a 5-yard completion on a one-handed catch by Roman Wilson. Mitchell's speed, awareness, and ball skills are off the charts, and I have no questions about his competitiveness after watching him in practices. So, based on some of the mock drafts I've seen, he's, going anywhere between 15 to 25 overall in the NFL draft right now, and huge stock rising here. We'll see his combine and see if that, launches him any higher. But one of the top cornerbacks in the draft here, Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. Quarterback, finally, Michael Penix Jr., getting acclimated to new surroundings as a Senior Bowl is always a challenge for quarterbacks, especially early in the week, as they have to learn new offense with new terminology and new teammates. Penix spun the ball better than anyone else here, though. I was most impressed by his ability to hang on his back foot and get the ball out with unbelievable zip and accuracy. He exceeded expectations with his performance in practices. Of course, medical evaluations are going to be a huge part of his draft evaluations as teams look into the season-ending injuries he suffered during his time at Indiana, but he did everything he needed to do this week. His teammate on the national squad, Oregon QB Bo Nix, improved over the course of the week, and he might look his best in the game on Saturday. So, Penix, we know he is very, very talented. I think in a practice format, that's where he's going to shine. Now, when it comes to, game and being physical and, with his injuries, I think he's had 2 knee injuries and 2 shoulder injuries. That's what he means by the medical evaluations. Is he a player that can hold up for a full season in the NFL? We don't know that. We know he's got incredible arm talent and mental abilities, but I think that's what's going to be his biggest issue is, can he stay healthy? He's thin. He got a thin frame. He's been injured before. Can he take the bruising of a NFL quarterback for a full 17 games? We'll see, but good week of practice for him. And then I actually heard, mixed results on Bo Nix. He's a guy here who mostly lines up in the shotgun. And, he's going to be asked to take snaps under center. That's going to be something for him to evolve and to continue to get better at. But Bo Nix, maybe not a practice guy. He might be, like Jeremiah says here, he might be better in game situations. So we'll move on here. Darius Robinson, we'll shout him out, defensive line out of Missouri. He's Jeremiah saying Saints star Cam Jordan came to mind when he watched Darius Robinson. So keep that in mind there. A linebacker, Peyton Wilson, linebacker out of NC State here. From a talent perspective, Wilson looked like a day 2 pick here in Mobile. He's a huge off-ball linebacker, 6'4", 234, but he showed the ability to run in cover too. So good news there. And then the last but not least, it's the cover of today's video, Roman Wilson, wide receiver. This week offered a big opportunity to Wilson, and he took full advantage of it. He didn't get a chance to run a lot of different routes in Michigan's offense, but he showed the ability to do so here in Mobile. Wilson is super explosive. He was the winner of day 1's practice and actually had 2 nice days, including making a one-handed catch on Wednesday, but before he couldn't practice on Thursday. So a couple of receivers moving up. No running backs. Notice that. No running backs stood out. Maybe running backs typically in practice are kind of whatever. You're mostly looking at, those receiver cornerback matchups. You're looking at those edge rusher offensive tackle matchups. And of course the quarterback's ability to get the ball out. But there is more to this here. There's day 2 standouts. Let me just recap that real quick, guys, who stood out in day 2 of practices. Quinion Mitchell, Toledo, Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver out of Florida, Dylan Lobb, the running back receiver listed here out of New Hampshire, another cornerback out of Louisville, Jarvis Brownlee, Christian Haynes, offensive guard from Connecticut. And then there's some takeaways here. More Darius Robinson love. Spencer Rattler finding his groove on the second day of practices. Let's see, the Buckeyes defensive tackle Michael Hall Jr. built of having a good, couple practices. And then the cornerback to watch here, it might be Rutgers Max Melton. We'll keep an eye on that name. And then the top center in the camp, left practice with a hamstring injury, Jackson Powers Johnson. Let's just recap real quick the day one standouts, and then we'll end the video. If you guys are new to the channel, definitely subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll be continuing to cover the NFL draft and putting out dynasty content. But here you go. Day one stars, Roman Wilson, the Michigan wide receiver. Sounds like he was one of the better receivers of the entire camp. And Ladd McConkey, another wide receiver here. If anyone was sleeping on what McConkey is capable of heading into this week at the Senior Bowl, they aren't anymore. So this is the guy that I've seen rising, and I've just from the other coverages I've seen, McConkey's been rising up boards, and he looks like a round 2 pick right now, anywhere in the 30 to 40 range, looking like a fun route runner who can, kind of be a slot receiver for you. So Ladd McConkey, keep an eye on his name. More Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Chris Broswell, a potential first, second round pick. Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA, had a good day one. And then there we go. Some more takeaways. Michael Penix Jr., his day one arm talent standing out. Bo Nix, Quinion Mitchell looks the part. You also have Rasheen Ali shows patience and burst, the first note on a running back in this article. And then the massive center out of Oregon had a really good day one. So there you go. Senior Bowl, we'll get some answers tomorrow during the game. But for the most part, mostly just want to care about what these guys are doing and building their practice habits and making sure that they're consistent. You want players that can be coached. And it looks like there was some movement going on in the Senior Bowl this week. So thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Friday evening and have a great weekend. Peace.